Right, I want to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. I want to talk about leadership in public services. I want to talk about innovation and design thinking and prototyping. I want to talk about all that stuff. But to begin with, your career path has been stranger than fiction. You started out repairing TVs and ended up as a corporate director in local government. Tell me about that. What's that trajectory?
I grew up in Dagenham, in East London. Weren't a lot of aspiration around in Dagenham, and everyone left school at 16. I don't even think my school had a sixth form from memory. I think it came in after I left. I left school in 1979, and the thing was to get an apprenticeship. They still had apprenticeships in those days. It was just before the YTS scheme came out. You won't remember what that is, but it was an innovation from indentured apprenticeships, but it wasn't really. It was just a way of cutting money out of the system. But anyway, I was lucky enough to get an indentured apprenticeship with a company called Radio Rentals. Yeah. As a TV engineer, I always wanted to do electronics from a small child. I was always building things when I was young. And so, I met my ambitions when I left school by getting a job. Spent 3 years as an apprentice and then was fixing tellies in East London for a few years. Then got into supervisory role when I was 23. I think I was the youngest supervisor in the company at the time. Right. Enjoyed that. I enjoyed sort of making decisions and asking people to do stuff. It was just sort of part of my nature, I think. I mean, when I was young, when we first left school, we used to have to go down the high street to book a holiday in those days. There was no internet. Yeah. There was, you couldn't ring and do it. You went into a shop like Thomas Cook or something. And it was always me when all my mates were organising like a holiday to Spain or something. It was me that went in, organised it all, collected all the money, sorted it all out. So I've always had that sort of nature, I guess. And then I met my wife at work, and she really was the one who encouraged me to start doing some sort of like go back to college and do some sort of like management courses. So I did my first courses with my wife, actually. We did two, one called Employing People and one called Financial Decision Making. Right. And they were at East Ham Technical College, and that was in the 80s.
While you were still at Radio Rentals?
I was still at Radio Rentals then, yeah. I was probably about 26 at that time, from memory. Maybe a bit younger. And so I quite enjoyed that. And then we sort of got together, started having children. And then I did a diploma in management studies while I was at Radio Rentals. But towards the end, by then I'd moved up to sort of like a district manager, managing a workshop and the service for centres for Radio Rentals. Company car phone had first come out. Yeah, they'd just come out, the old car phones. So they had to be installed in the car, like physically, all built into the car. So that was all fine.
They wouldn't allow that now, would they? Reaching for the car phone.
I think, I was doing my diploma, which was a 2-year course in management studies, and then halfway through that, I could see that there wasn't a career in TV servicing by then. This was now around 1991 type. So I'd done 13 years at Radio Rentals, working up from an apprentice to a sort of like a middleish manager, I guess, with a company car and a car phone and a petrol card. Because until I was 29, I'd never bought a gallon of petrol as it was then. It's litres now, isn't it? Yeah. Because I'd always had a company car and I'd always just, done it on the company's expense. There was redundancies going on, so I asked if I could be made redundant, and luckily, they said yes. So I left Radio Rentals in 1992. I didn't have a job to go to, but wanted to get into local government because in my DMS, my Diploma in Management Studies course, there was a load of people from local government in Essex on it. Right. Because they were going through, get this, a restructuring of local government.
Oh, no way.
And creating unitary authorities from two-tier systems.
That sounds familiar? Yeah.
Sound familiar? And that was at the time when Thurrock was created. obviously now renowned for getting in lots of debt by investing in things it shouldn't have done. But also Southend Borough Council was created as well. So from Essex County Council and all the districts, they created some, but not others. And so the people on my course were all talking about this, and it all sounded at the time very strategic to me. So, and the other thing is they didn't work weekends, which obviously in the service industry, I always worked on a Saturday. So I quite liked the idea of not working weekends. I had 3 small children at the time. So I said to my wife, well, I'll just get into local government when I go. So we went off to Ireland for probably about 3 weeks, something like that, in the summer of '92. And then when I come back, there was a little advert in one of those freebie papers you used to get. Again, you don't get them anymore, do you? So this is all analog rather than digital. Yeah. And it said, safety inspector required, Redbridge Council. So I didn't even know where Redbridge was because it's not a name synonymous with this area.
Of course, yeah.
Because it's actually in Ilford, Redbridge Council. And anyway, so I worked out where it was and I applied and got the job. And the reason I got it is because I'd qualified as a safety advisor in one of my jobs in radio rentals. When we went into Europe in the early 90s, they brought out something called the 6-pack of health and safety, like display screen equipment. Everyone had to get free glasses, didn't they, and all stuff like that. Yeah. So I was sent off to Coventry Management Centre for 6 weeks to get qualified, which I did. Never really used it, but then did use it to get into local government. And so, that started my career in local government in 1992. I spent a lovely summer, autumn and moving into the next year in the summer, just going round schools and elderly persons' homes and any other asset that Redbridge had, which they had a lot more then than they do now because, people have divested in a lot of their assets, unfortunately, in local government, as they did in the NHS at the time as well, sold off lots of hospitals and then had to buy new ones, didn't they, and spend more money. Just inspecting boiler rooms and going around doing that. I then got promoted. I think within about a year and a half, I was the head of safety at Redbridge, which was good, and I enjoyed that. And then I went into, I became the business manager there. And I finished my DMS while doing that. My second year in my DMS, I funded myself through a Barclays loan they used to do in those days, but got the time off. I used to have to leave at 4 2 nights a week. When I say time off, an hour off of work to get to the college to do my night school. And then when I'd done that, I'd done my diploma, I then funded myself through an MBA. This was all at Redbridge. And so by 95, 6, I'd got an MBA, a private sector type one, not a public sector one. I think that gave me the language and the understanding of management, to be honest with you, the grounding to speak with more senior people. And I always found it easy to understand the modelling and the models and theories of management and how to apply them. It just seemed to be something I could understand, where I know some people do struggle with the strategic into operational. It was something that I sort of understood, and it's probably because I'd come up through the ranks. I mean, spending that probably year going around schools and, elderly persons' homes and, adult learning, people with adult learning difficulties, homes and all of that, in talking to the management and all of that about their safety concerns, and that it sort of gives you a good grounding and understanding in all of the things, including the depots and the bin collection and the roads and the potholes and all of those things and the grave digging and everything. And I had a whole, smorgasbord of all of the things that local government did, and I had a good working knowledge of it. And if we go back to what I said when at the beginning, that I'd always been building things and like electronics and that. So, and I got trained in how to logically work out problems.
Right, okay.
Because that's what you have to do when you're fixing tellies. You have to go through things, understand maps and drawings and work all that out. It just, for me, I was able to understand and unpick how all of these processes worked in my mind. and understand where the issues were. And originally for like health and safety reasons, but then when I moved into more management, then actually, you know, problem solving some of those more difficult issues around how we better serve the residents and businesses of whatever council I'd particularly be working with. I, funnily enough, did 13 years there as well.
Right, okay.
So this is 26 years into my career now.
Yeah.
I now have 4 children because my son was born in 95. And then I left Redbridge in 2006, early 2006. I was head of performance at Redbridge when I moved, and I went over to Lewisham as the head of customer service strategy, I think it was called.
Right.
When I first went over there, and I primarily actually followed my boss. So my boss was Leslie Seary in Redbridge, and she went over to be the corporate director of customer services in Lewisham. And a few months later, I followed her there. Yeah. And that's where we first met in Lewisham when you came in as one of the graduates. Talking of the graduate scheme in local government, it came out while I was at Redbridge, and I actually was involved in setting up the Redbridge scheme.
Oh, right, okay.
Originally when it first came out. So I'd always had an interest in that, and also, the people coming into local government, and getting some really top graduate people into a profession that they wouldn't normally go in.
Yeah.
Because at the time when that first happened, probably in the early 2000s, I think it probably was, we didn't have anything like that. And so where were the next leaders coming from, in local government, and people like yourself, where were they coming from? So I've always been a great advocate of the local government graduate scheme, because also it was a rich vein of enthusiastic, talented people that you could use to, make things better for the residents and the businesses of whatever council that you work for. So, I'd always done that. And as you know, when I got to Lewisham, I did tap that vein quite extensively.
You hooved them all up.
Moved them all up, got them all into gainful paid work, and we did some good things at Lewisham with that. So moving on, I did just under 10 years at Lewisham. So what's that now? I'm 20.
You're up to like 36 years now.
36 years. Honestly, it drives you mad, doesn't it? So 36 years in, I left there and went to Brent.
You were transformation before you left, right?
So I was... we did transformation. I first got involved. I've always tried to get involved in like government initiatives, or whether it be regional, so like whether it be like London councils or the local government association, or for a time there was the DCMS, which were sort of funding innovations around things like business process review and improvement, BPI, and then that moved into things like the Design Council, Double Diamond type innovation and change work. And so I'd always sort of like making sure that myself and any teams I was with was on the cutting edge of this stuff. And at Lewisham, it was quite easy because we had Barry Quirk as the chief executive, and he knew everybody in the regions and in central government. And it was towards the tail end of the previous Labour government in those days. And he always I always remember he'd sort of like swing past my desk. We were all in them like sort of pig pens, weren't we? Yeah. They called them. It was an open plan, but you couldn't see anybody. It always struck me as a little odd that day. It's called it open plan, but when you sat down, you couldn't see anybody.
You're in a little maze.
You're in your own little area, and just could hear the sounds drifting across, couldn't you? But anyway, that all went eventually, didn't it, with modernisation of buildings and and hot desking and all of those sorts of things that troubled people for time, as I remember. And he just said, Michael Bishard's a friend of mine. I think he's Lord Bishard now, isn't he? Might have been a sir then. He's chair of the Design Council. Why don't you pop along, see what they're doing? And then we got right into, didn't we, innovation and transformation work using the design council approaches.
Well, I want to talk a lot more about that because I think we genuinely were at the very beginning of that whole movement of human-centered design. But you went from Lewisham to
from
Brent.
Lewisham, Leslie moved on. She went off to Islington to be chief exec. I spent another couple of years there enjoying myself, but felt it was time to move on. So a job came up at Brent I went for and got. So I was there. I retired in April.
Just recently,
this year, not that long ago. I was there just about 10 years. So what's that now? 46 years, is it, working? I know I don't look old enough. So 46 years working. And
thank you for your service.
Yeah, you're welcome. And so that got to Brent. They had no transformation, nothing really. They'd gone through quite a painful change, both at political level and then in the managerial level. And there'd sort of been pretty much a big clear out of management in Brent just before I got there. And so it was a fairly new team. I had an interim chief executive at the time. And I went in initially, again, this was another conversation about, well, it'll be this, but the job's going to change. So I initially went in as director of IT because I'd by then managed the IT in Lewisham for a while as well as other things that I was doing corporately. And within 3 months, I'd got a redundancy letter at risk.
Right.
Because they'd restructured.
Ideal.
Yeah, ideal, yeah. They'd restructured. And then I think then I became the director of strategic commissioning. That sounds quite fancy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it had all policy and communications and member services and all sorts of things in it. And my fledgling, as I was building, transformation team. So I had 3 transformation managers by then.
Yeah.
It took me about a year in to sort of set that up. And I had 3 people working on transformation program for the council to deliver its savings and support the services. And then the big change for me, I guess, was when Carolyn Downs came in as the chief exec a year after I started. She rightly restructured in the way that she wanted it, and I became the assistant chief executive. And that's when the transformation thing really took off, and and digital, the big push on digital transformation. Because I had the IT, I just sort of brokered a shared service with my old council, Lewisham, and then we brought Southwark in. So that's been running now for about 10 years as a shared service, providing the IT endpoint device and critical infrastructure services. So became the assistant chief exec, and then about 4 years after that became a corporate director. First of customer services, and then I had given all the environmental services added on to customer services in the centre, and then I got added on housing, and then some of the environment got moved out and other stuff got moved back in. So, just usual corporate directory type stuff for about the last 6 years of my career, I guess.
Nice.
So that's how I got there.
Well, if you need your CV, we'll just take the transcript of this, buzz it through ChatGPT, job done. So we started talking about design thinking, and I met you in 2009, 2010 when I joined the graduate scheme. I was very lucky to join your team because we were at the very beginning of this movement of human-centered design thinking in local government. I didn't realise at the time. I just thought, this is an interesting methodology. What I didn't realise was that discipline didn't really exist in government before that moment. So we were right at the very beginning of it. How is it that you sort of find yourself at the beginning of these movements of new ways of thinking? How did that come about?
I think it's just my natural nature or resting state is I'll always try anything. I remember working for people that I always felt were a little negative and would expel more energy defending their position and the status quo than they would testing and trying things and seeing things would work. And I always, working for people like that, I always found it frustrating. So, mentally in your mind, I thought, when I get to it, because I always in my own mind knew that I would get to a position where I would be able to make decisions myself on this stuff. I thought when I get there, I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to encourage people to test and try and do things and give them the cover they need to do it, because it's really hard working in this area. It's ambiguous. There's no clear end goal necessarily all the time. It's sort of hard to sew a button on it, as they say.
Yeah.
And so people need some frame that they can sort of work within.
Yeah.
And so if their boss gives them that cover and they feel like they've got their back and they're supporting them, then I think that allows them to innovate and try these things and work in this ambiguous way. Because I've worked in it when I didn't get that, and I found it very stressful and hard. And I worked in it when I did get it, and I found it much easier to do. So always at that point in my career when I was younger, I thought, well, when I am in that position, that's the environment I'll create. So that's all I've sort of ever done. So I've always accepted anything. A bit like when I said with my career, I was given this, I was given that, I did this, I did that. I've never said no to anything. I've always said, yeah, all right, I'll try it.
And just see where it led.
Because everything basically boils down to the fundamentals of, there will be a process, but what's around that is people and emotions, and you've got to make the two work together, and you've got to enthuse people in doing that, haven't you? So it doesn't really matter what the technical subject is. Most people can pick up any subject over time enough to be able to work and manage within it. So I don't believe this technocrat stuff at all, to be honest with you.
Well, I want to know a bit more about what in practice does it look like creating the boundaries and the cover for people? Because I'll give you an example. I've mentioned this to you before, but when I was a grad, so I would have been 23 or something. We were working on this channel shift program. You may or may not remember this. You'll remember the channel shift program, but you might not remember this specific example. And we built this dashboard of all the call center data.
I do remember that. Yeah. We had to get Lindsay's
Andre
other half to build the spreadsheet behind it,
to make up to my lack of intelligence. Yeah. So so we built this. I say we. Andre built this thing with a little bit of input from me, and we were just about to go to a board meeting with all the other assistant directors, housing and customer, because you were out of customer then and Ralph was doing customer.
Yeah.
And I was supposed to be presenting and sharing all this really great insight about where there was failure demand in the system and bottlenecks and all this stuff. And like 5 minutes before the meeting where I was going to do this show and tell, I broke the whole thing, like completely irreparably broke it. So all these people were teed up to come and listen to us.
I do remember that.
Yeah. And me and Lindsay came over to you and I just said, Peter, I'm so sorry. I've literally just broken this thing. And you just said, do you think there's any way of fixing it before the meeting if we pushed it back? And I said, I really don't think there is actually. And you said, okay, it's fine. These things happen. And you literally, because all the assistant directors were all in the same spot that you were talking about with the little partitions.
Yeah.
And you just went around everybody and you just said, something's happened and sorry, inconvenience, but we'll come back and we'll do it again properly.
Yeah.
And I was so unbelievably worried. And then after I saw the way you reacted, I was like, oh, wow, it actually is okay to mess up if you just are honest and own up. Yeah. So that's one example of where I think you could have reacted differently and I would have then, that probably would have influenced the way that I worked under you from that moment onwards if you'd have been different. So that's one example. What else does it look like creating space and boundaries for people?
Well, first and foremost, you've got to sort out the finances of anything. Right. That's always been my belief. I've always wanted my fingers in the finance pies,
right?
Because without finance, it's hard to do anything, isn't it? So I've always had a keen interest in how the money works. Follow the money, as they say, and you'll understand how you can get things done. So that's the first thing is you, in order to have good resources, you do need money.
Yeah.
So I've always started from that base of trying to build from, accessing funding to make sure that, when you want to build and break something, that, we've got a solid financial base to have done that on. And the reason you were doing that failure demand stuff was all around savings again, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If you remember.
I do, yeah.
It was around 2010 time, wasn't it?
That's it.
And I think the Labour government had just been replaced by the then, was it Conservative Liberal coalition, wasn't it? And it was all about austerity, wasn't it? Do you remember?
I remember it very well.
And there was this big push around, making those savings. But in order to make savings, you've got to invest, haven't you?
Yeah.
You've got to invest in people, you've got to invest in systems, you've got to invest in, different ways of working. So that to me, the first thing is I've always tried to get, available funding in order to do that. And in many times in local government, when you're doing that and you're building a new team and all of that, you can't get, core revenue funding because, it's like hen's teeth, isn't it? It's hard to find, but you can get capital. And then capital can be treated, in certain ways as well. And you'll have something like the minimum revenue provision for capital, because they have to have revenue that covers capital in finance.
Yeah.
And so there's always money within those margins that you can use as one-offs to start to build, a proposition that if it then works, you will get core funding, because obviously they see the value of investing to save in these things. So that's the first thing. You've got to have done that, which I would have done by then, and we would have done that. I always make sure, and I've always made sure, that I support my colleagues, so my peers. So like you said, I went round and talked to people. They would have all listened to me at that point because, I'd have had a good connection with them, and, we were friends in many ways. We all worked in the same area, and they know I wouldn't have been bullshitting them. They'd have known it was genuine. So I would have felt comfortable at the time going and saying, oh, look, it ain't really worked, but, the prize is worth it. Let's wait and do it. So it's about building relationships. So it's about money and it's about building relationships. But it's mostly about, setting a clear vision. Yeah. And showing people that this is what it's going to look like, in 2-3 years' time. Let's immerse ourselves in what it does going to look like, what it's going to feel like, where we're going to be. Because if you can do that, it doesn't matter if your path, it goes off on tangents or you go straight to it. Luckily, sometimes you do go straight to it, don't you? But not always. No. And mostly you don't. Mostly you walk around the garden like a teddy bear, don't you, for a little while? One
like
step, two step.
Oh, I see.
Tiggly under there, that sort of stuff. Didn't we do that? But,
no, I'm with you now, Yeah.
Obviously, I had too many kids. That's what it was. So, get the finances right, build relationships, build trust, and set a clear vision for people. And we'd have done all that by then in Lewisham, hadn't we? And actually what you were working on was really good, and it did show, it showed where the bottlenecks were. Yeah. Because you've got to shift those senior managers to change what they're doing. And they like protecting things, don't they? People. It is natural. I do understand that. It's uncomfortable when you're not, when someone is dabbling in your garden and you don't want them to. But that's the only way I've ever found that it generally works, is that, you do it that way. I don't know whether it's a good analogy, but how's you boil a frog, isn't it? You turn the heat up very slowly, and it doesn't notice, does it? So it's too late.
That's a nice image. Thanks for that.
It's too late.
There's lots of things that I observe about you, seeing you operate, that I've always found very interesting. You remember everything, which I think is really interesting, because I've seen you do this on many occasions, because you're able to keep people honest about the things that they've said, and you never have any notes. You all just got it up in your head, which is really frustrating, like an elephant or something.
Got a phone.
You've got your phone, yeah. But you're also quite playful in work, in a sort of way that's unique to you. And I wonder how much that is just you, or whether that's you're doing that on purpose, because I think it does make. Watching you, it does sort of make sort of slightly trickier conversations possible, because you can it's a softer way into it. How do you think about
I think that is more me than it is
Right.
like consciously doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that started, whether it was always me or whether I was doing it and then it became me or not. But even at school, I was always sort of like one who sort of like was making the jokes and getting sent out for saying something the teacher didn't like.
Nose against the wall.
Go and walk up and down. We had something called the potting shed. Oh, that's another story. In my school, only in Dagenham would you get that. By the way, if you were naughty, they'd sent you out of class. They sent you to a potting shed, literally a greenhouse, where you played darts and smoked.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, who wouldn't do that once
Not
a month?
smoking. We don't condone the smoking.
Who wouldn't do that once a month? You got to remember, this was the 70s.
Yeah, it's a different time.
Yeah, it was a different time, wasn't it? Yeah, but literally that was the punishment. Send you to the potting shed. But anyway, these are those things. So I don't know which came first, but it's just natural, really. That's just how I am.
If you're still here, my assumption is you're finding this conversation useful. We're recording these interviews because we think it's important to share stories of people who are leading and designing more human, impactful and relational public services, and we'd like as many people as possible to see them. If you think you can help us with that, then I'd be so grateful if you did one of three things. You can just like the video and that'll help other people to find it in future. You can leave us a comment and let us know why you stuck around, or you could subscribe to the channel. And honestly, I've got no good reason for that other than it would cheer me up. Okay, back to the interview.
Well, we were talking about taking circuitous routes to end goals and the importance of having a clear vision. I suppose what that makes me think about is more agile ways of working, more sort of testing and learning and prototyping. And I know that's something that you've been doing for a very long period of time. I wonder if you can talk about some examples of that in Brent and how that more test and learn approach has come about. The reason I'm asking is because obviously test and learn is a big focus for government now, and there's lots of funding going into that around the country. But I think there are less examples outside of digital and in service land of the literal practice of testing and learning and what it makes possible. So I think it's good to tell stories about that.
Yeah. A good example, I suppose our community hubs would be the main one, which was less digital and more about changing the way we interact with our residents in particular, not so much businesses, but our residents in particular. So we did some, what we called them in Brent was outcome-based reviews.
Right.
So obviously the focus being on the outcome. And we used the design principles from the Double Diamond, from the work of the Design Council. I by then developed my team, my transformation team. It was less digital at that time, but it was more just focusing on transformation. And we had there was probably 3 or 4 of us doing it. Then we trained the team in Design Council methodologies, and then we picked some areas where we said, well, what's the outcome we're looking for? And one of them was around this interaction with people, but being closer to where they live,
right,
rather than everything coming out of the Brent Civic Centre. So we did quite a big piece of work, and we tried to do these in 3 months, because the other thing is that if things drag on for a long time, everyone's got a day job, everyone sort of like loses focus, don't they, and gets on. So we tried to do it in that time. But the big thing is to get some sort of like voices into the system.
Yeah.
So we trained some staff to go out with their phones and just talk to customers at the front desk and, in community settings and all of that, and just, with the phone, just have that interaction and do some video. We did a lot of data crunching around numbers of people, where they live, what benefits are on this, and so where does the data tell you to go? So we had the sort of data set, we had the voice of the people there. Then you talk to the services themselves and asking them at the front line. It's important that you get the front line. So people doing the job, it's not rocket science, it's what people do. What's it like being the employee here, doing that? What frustrates you? What can you do? And then we put all that together and got all of that data together. And we had a day where we invited, service users, staff, all the agencies, other agencies and community organisations, because a lot of this is, the answer is to work very closely with your community organisations, those people that are empowered and want to, change what's going on the street and in the local area. And we did a big day with all visuals and videos and, built up that understanding of what the issues are, what people are saying, what they want to do. And then, that's that sort of like visioning, opening out, the diamonds going out, isn't it? And then got people to vote using the dots, the dots on the boards, getting them to vote on areas, because we've got them to sit down in groups and come up with ideas. And, a big idea that came out of all of these was couldn't we sort of like use a local sort of building and like maybe have a service there that's more holistic, and how we could do that. So that became our community hub. So that was one of the things we said with Prototype. There was a number of things we said with Prototype, but that was one of them. So we went to Harlesden. I think it might have been in something like November, because I remember we had like a double-decker bus outside and diesel fumes pumping out when people were going in and talking to people. But we also hired the local Methodist church hall. And for 2 weeks we had all of the different services there, all just doing frontline stuff, and we were testing and prototyping it.
Like actually doing the thing? Actually
doing it, yeah. And it was just for 2 weeks, and we just, got a bit of money to fund it, because again, why would like frontline services send people there? Because they've got to do their day job back at the Civic Centre. So we were sort of like backfilling a little bit and stuff like that, and pulling favours in and doing all sorts of stuff. We got the members involved, the local ward members all fully engaged, the leadership fully engaged in it, because they could see that if it worked, it would actually make a difference. And that was very successful. So I worked with colleagues who run libraries and agreed that we could actually prototype this service in Harlesden Library.
Right.
So we just set up in Harlesden Library. Again, I got some funding, one-off funding to do it. It was over a couple of years. It was sort of like capital money. And we took on a guy to be the hub's manager, and we got a couple of staff in there. And we ran a hub service just out of Harlesden for 18 months.
Right.
Learned a lot from it. And by then, this is that point about, I don't know, boiling up the frog or whatever, by then it was such a good service that people wanted it replicated. So and again, I was working on that in the background and getting funding and putting in a bid and different things. After 18 months, we actually rolled that out across the borough, mostly in libraries, not all in libraries. I think they've now got probably 6 or 7 community hubs. And just before I left, we developed that into a service not far from Harlesden, in an old NHS building that we leased, that had adult social care learning support in there, and it was being underutilised. And so we put in there a hub service along with a homelessness service, along with the adults as well. And so now there's like an even bigger sort of service there, which they've called New Horizons, which is a lovely sort of summation of what it is. Supporting families, and we've done quite a lot of work with a number of community groups. One in particular called Sufra, that's a local charity that does food bank and support, and the whole thing is sort of run by them, and we've got our own staff there as well, and it's based on food as well now, so people can go there and get a meal. They can also have all of the issues that they may have sorted out by different services at the same time, and then they're on that program now for I believe they might have moved it up to 6 months, because we sort of prototyped it recently, up to 3 months, and it's a subscription model where they also get like about £30 worth of shopping each week, for a free £3 or £4 a week subscription. And it's sort of a more dignified way of doing it as well, because it's not based on money, it's based on stars. So like a tin of beans might be 1 star, and a loaf of bread might be 1 star, and stuff like that. And everyone got like 26 stars to spend. And then there's a lot of free produce that they can take as well that would be soiled if it weren't used, that are, it's given by organisations and supermarkets and stuff like that. So that's now open, and it's also got our homelessness service there. It's a real thriving hub. So, and that all came from one of these outcome-based reviews where we did a lot of the work, opened up people's mind, come up with ideas, prototype that. Remember, that took 2 weeks, then 18 months, then rolled out. We then had, obviously, pandemic, where we had to frontline. So, well, we changed it to a telephone service, actually, at that time, and then focus a lot of our energy on building food parcels and getting them delivered for quite a while, which was very successful during that period. And then we had to reinvent it again back after the pandemic and go back to where it is now. So, and it's one of the most valued services, I think, in Brent now, but it wasn't something that was ever there before.
So I think this is such a good example for lots of different reasons. This is the essence of prototyping: very quickly testing in practice in a space, getting real information and data and learning about what works and what doesn't work. What I'm interested to ask is, there's this approach. I think it's the only effective approach when you're dealing with enormous amounts of uncertainty and you don't really know what's going to work or not. How else do you accumulate the knowledge without testing? But it's very hard for everybody in the system to do it. So it's hard for people on the front line to be released to do it. It's hard for the managers to get cover, because they're thinking, oh God, the caseloads are going to be going up. What are we going to do for this 2 weeks when they're off in the Methodist hall? It's very hard for finance directors to say, well, all right, I'll sign you a check for this thing, and I got no idea whether it's going to work or not. So what's the conversation at those different levels? You can work in any direction you want. You can work frontline to finance director or finance director down.
It goes back to what I said earlier, isn't it? It starts with the money.
Yeah.
Now, we did that prototyping, we did all those things, but prior to that, I'd been building up trust with my colleagues. I'm not just coming in saying a load of words, give me a load of money, and then it'll all get frittered away. That I think, if I say I'm going to do something, I genuinely think most people who I've worked with would say, well, yeah, we'll do it. And it's never been for me, myself in that sense. It's always, it's always trying to focus on the outcome, which is for the residents of, in this case, Brent, and for the politicians, because they are a representation of those people of Brent. They've been put there by those people, and they've been given a very important job to do. And so, supporting and servicing what they require is the number one thing, isn't it? As long as you stick within the boundaries of regulation, law and governance and all of those things, which is obviously, a given. That you have to do. So it's building up those things of trust, understanding where the money is and what money you can use for how long. And, I think we were talking before when we had a coffee, before we started, that, a lot of times government will just drop money on a council, with 3 months to go and say, oh, can you do something around this, or can you do something around that, can't you? And so there's always little pots of money that can be used to innovate with. But, you've got to be trusted in order to do that, haven't you? So you've got to build that trust with politicians, with senior managers, especially in finance. You've got to build a good working relationship with them. And then you've got to deliver, haven't you? So up to that point, obviously I'd been doing those things for a while in Brent before we got to doing the outcome-based reviews on which led to the community hubs. And so while they were always testing it, I was in the background working on the next bit, sowing the seeds. This is what's going to happen next. This is what we're working on. This is what we need, and all of that. So when it comes to the transition, that goes as smoothly as it can. So, frontline staff going in there, we had a bit of money to backfill there, so they could cover it with overtime or whatever it is that, however they covered it. It made them feel a little bit more comfortable, didn't it? Because, if you got 5 members of staff taken out for 2 weeks, I don't know what that would be in money terms, but no more than $5,000 or something. Then that's given into their budget so they can either use agency or other staff or manoeuvre people around so those people can do it. And I think you do need a little bit of that to start with in order for people to free their minds up from being defensive and saying no, because the other thing is they say, well, when you set up these community hubs, who's going to run them? Where are they going to go? They're starting to feel, will I be losing my frontline staff? All of those things are going on. They might not.
That's all very real as well, isn't it?
Of course it is. Of course it is. And so you've got to be able to work with people and bring them along and sell that vision that what it's going to look like. And so that's all I ever try to do is create the right environment in order to be able to do that, so that the staff who are working on it, whatever it is, like the community hub, can do it, can innovate, can try these things. I mean, it was a bit of a leap for our library service at the time.
Of course.
Which weren't in my area, so I didn't have direct management control over any of that. But my colleague at the time, Phil, it was in his area. He was a corporate director. He gave it its support. But they've got like a tenant there now, haven't they? And they're trying to get their kids' library and do this, and then we've got people there, giving advice in open public spaces. Those things aren't easy, and they had to work around and work out how they could work together, and and that took 18 months for us to get that model right before we could then roll it out to the other libraries, which we did, and it's now thriving. So.
Well, we'll talk about the environment where this kind of work is possible. I think one of the things that needs to be in place for this kind of work to happen is for people not to be overwhelmed by far too many priorities. And that's a real challenge in local government, because there are always more priorities than there's time in the day. How did you think about that? Because this is just one chunk of work. This is one priority in a massive portfolio of work. How did you go about prioritizing that stuff to make sure that people are focusing on the things that have the potential, the highest potential for a return or better outcomes, whatever it is?
It's a good question. It's probably hard to answer in many ways. There's always the Pareto rule, isn't there? That and I've always found that it's pretty good. 20% the effort gives you 80% of the the outcome.
The value of the outcome.
So you've got to be able to pick those. What's the 20% of all of your work that's going to deliver the 80% of what you're trying to do? And you have to be clear about that, and you also have to be clear that when you're working on something, if it clearly isn't going down the right road and it isn't working, you've got to stop it. Too often people don't stop it, and it continues on and on, doesn't it? And I don't know, I'm not so much in Brent, but I think a bit in Lewisham, certainly in Redbridge, they had this sort of like board fatigue, where there'd be boards and boards and boards set up, and no one ever shut any of them down.
Yes.
There was a few in Brent, but nowhere near like I've worked in other places. And I think that's a symptom of people just not being honest and saying, well, actually this ain't working, let's just stop it and start again, because everyone sort of tries to protect their own little areas. So I've always just looked at what are the main things we need to be doing. It's always going to be supporting the budget process, isn't it? Because that drives a lot of behaviours and approaches to things. It drives political careers. If they get their budget savings a bit wonky, then that can create all sorts of problems. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you remember at Lewisham when they brought in that car parking charging and cashless too early, and it really, it was like that. It took up so much management time for so long, didn't it? and it needed to be unwound. It wasn't necessarily not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It was just the wrong time to do it. In many ways. So I think you've just got to know what are the right projects that you do focus on, and the others just come along anyway with it. And it's like you were saying, if I can create an environment where you think, oh, he's all right, he's gonna. If I muck up, it doesn't matter so much, as long as we learn from it and we move forward. Then yes, you'll have that one big project that I want you to get done, because that's the 20% one.
Yeah.
But you'll do the others anyway because you'll want to. And I know that, because that's what I know that what people are like, and I'd want to do that as well.
Yeah.
So I've never sort of worried too much about that. So you have the main projects that you have to deliver.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of other stuff that I've always found does get delivered, but people would more worry about if they weren't in an environment where they felt they could deliver more generally. I've always had my managers and staff say, "Oh, Pete, stop saying yes to everything."
Yeah.
I know they feel like there's another project. I'll come back from this. Oh, I've said we'd do this.
Yeah, but there's something interesting in that, isn't there? We might have just accumulated some more projects, but what is clear is what are the real priorities that absolutely do need to be delivered, and also crucially, where are we trying to get to on those projects? And I think those things are often pretty wonky. It's not clear what the real priority is, and it's also not clear what the goal is. Yeah. And if you can't be clear on those things, then it's inevitable that people will pull in different directions.
And I'd always say get the building blocks right.
Yeah.
Because you can't build a house without good foundations, as they say, can you? So you've got to have the finance. I know I keep going on about it, but you've got to have the finances all sorted out. But you've got to have other things like, so the governance has to be good. The I don't know, if you're doing digital, you've got to make sure that the infrastructure is solid and cyber secure and all of those. You've got to have those things in place in order to have successful projects and for people to be able to work in a successful way. So you always have to make sure that the fundamentals, the building blocks, are strong, and then you can build up. You can build up from that.
Say more about the governance, because I think that is it's almost like cholesterol in the arteries, veins. I don't know. I'm not much of a
depends whether it's good or bad cholesterol.
I don't know. Cholesterol in the veins of public services is sometimes the poor governance or board fatigue, all of that stuff. What does that look like when it's working well? What's governance that helps actually learn?
To be honest with you, I think so. The pandemic highlighted this for me more. I mean, I've worked in different committee structures. From when I first started in local government, it was the old traditional committees where the chair had all the power with their director, and it actually created cultures of fiefdoms.
Yeah,
and it wasn't in my view, it wasn't a healthy approach. And when they went to a cabinet style model, I think that helped a lot in being able to innovate and change, because it speeded up decision making. Now, you do need checks and balances and all of that. You need healthy and good scrutiny, because in a lot of councils, it's pretty much a one-party state, isn't it? In a lot of councils.
Yeah.
So they're not going to get a lot of scrutiny from the opposition because there's pretty much not one
there.
One, yeah. So, and that's something about the political world, that the leadership of a political organisation also needs to be able to let themselves be scrutinised by their own people and empower them to do it, because it's hard enough anyway, isn't it? And you're trying to manage a whole group, you've got to give people something to do. Not everyone just wants to be a backbench rider, do they? But if you're going to do that, you've got to make sure that check and balance has at least got some teeth in it, because you do need to keep your governance on the straight and narrow in that sense. They're fairly broad rails, but you do need to operate within them. So it's important that an organisation, to be healthy, has good governance.
Yeah.
Otherwise you start making bad decisions and you end up in bad places. And it might not be for a few years or whatever, but ultimately you will, because it's just the way of the world, isn't it? So that's why I'd say it's healthier to work in a place that's got good governance. but it'll also mean that you probably can speed up decision making.
Yeah.
If it's got good governance as well. And I was saying the pandemic, obviously they relaxed the rules on things like procurement and that, didn't they? And you could make decisions more quickly to get, things like masks and stuff like that. But you still had to then publish what you were doing and make sure the public could see it and, challenge it and those sorts of things as well. But obviously it does speeden up the cycle, doesn't it? Because in local government, when you're planning sort of like a decision, it could be up to 2-3 months, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Going through different internal bodies, boards and that, and then into the political arena and then up into, a decision at cabinet or at full council. So, so getting the governance right, but getting it healthy and good. So you need a good audit sort of system as well that checks and dips in and makes sure that it is working well. All of that you have to have in place. It's one of those building blocks.
Yeah.
That, when you've worked for a good organisation, they've got that right, I've found.
We've talked a bit about decision making. I know that's something that's one of the parts of your role you always enjoyed the most. What kind of information do you feel like you need in order to be able to make good decisions? Because I always noticed with you that you were able to make decisions pretty quickly, but to do that you need good information, right, to be able to do that. So what did you need?
Well, I think you need to understand the subject, whatever the subject is. You need to have. Normally, when it comes to a point where you've got to make a decision, you've had fair few conversations about it in your management team or the council management team, if you're on it, like I was. Things rarely come completely out of the blue, and when they do, you just have to use what knowledge you've got of. To make a decision, but generally, it builds up to a decision. So you have to understand the subject. You've got to understand the unintended consequences of it. That's something that I think not everyone necessarily does. You might make a decision to do something, and then all of a sudden it affects someone over there, but you don't really realise it should. So I think before you make a decision, you need to try and work through what the impact of that decision is. Yeah, not just. Yes, we're going to buy that. Yes, we're going to buy that, but actually, when we do buy it, do we have to keep it maintained? How long for? Has anyone we got to bring in any staff in to run it, and we got to do all this? And what happens to these people who over here, who when we run that might not be running this the same way? It's there's more to a decision than just what's in front of you. There are lots of other facets to it that you have to understand. And I don't know, I think over the years you build up a compendium of knowledge about these things, I think, or I certainly did, that allowed me to be able to work through that in my mind fairly quickly. Yeah. And know what the consequences of doing these things are. You don't always get it right necessarily, but the other thing is if you don't, you've got to acknowledge that, haven't you?
And learn from it,
and do it quickly. If it isn't right, you've got to row it back a little bit, haven't you? But I mean, I don't think there's anything I couldn't write down how I do it. It's just something I'd sort of like. I'd think about the money. I'd think about the people. I'd think about the consequences to the environment it's in, and all of those things, and what the long term consequences of having whatever it is that the decision has given you. Yeah, is because everything's got a life that needs to be sustained, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you've said a couple of times about if something's not working, you gotta stop it, or you gotta be honest. And I think that's something that's very hard for people to do. It's a rarity that you find people that are very comfortable with that level of honesty and that level of willingness to actually just say, do you know what, this isn't working. Let's row this back. Because it's a challenge, isn't it? Because in a role like yours, you've had to be sort of quite passionate about, this is what I think we need to be doing in order to get the buy-in to do that. But you also have to be humble enough to say, actually, we tried some of these things, and it didn't work. It's hard, isn't it?
I think what tends to happen though in reality is you don't stop something, you just adapt it. Yeah, and you modify it and you repackage it and put it back on the rails is what tends to happen more often than not.
Yeah.
More often. I mean, there are things like that example of the parking charges where that just got completely rowed back because it didn't land well at all. And I suppose the lesson there was for us, we should have done a bit more testing of that policy before, it was adopted. But again, it was, looking for money, looking for budget savings, looking for all those things. As I say, I don't think it was the wrong thing, that one, actually. It's just at the wrong time. I'm sure that is cashless parking now in that area.
We could check.
So, yeah, we could check. Haven't been over there for a while, to be fair.
Stop the camera. I mean, there's far more complexity in local government than people assume, I think, isn't there? What on the face of it seems like to one directorate or one individual, well, this is an obvious solution to a simple problem. More often than not, it's really not that simple because it involves lots of stakeholders. It involves people, and I think that's where you use the word testing, where testing is very, very healthy early, as soon as possible. Lowest fidelity that you can get away with in order to accumulate learning. But
well, I think look, the point around testing or prototyping and doing all those things is that unless you go out wide first with that first diamond, and you gather in all the information you can about whatever the subject is, and you focus it on outcomes, not on inputs, because you get lost in all of the inputs. You focus it what we're trying to achieve, what's the outcome we want, and then you look at all of the data, and then you bring in all the actors around that have an involvement in it or a stake in it, and you share all of that, and you open it up for conversation and ideas. Yeah, that's really what you need to be doing all the time, whether it's in microcosm, small, doing it, or whether it's like that big, event. And that I explained earlier around, the community hubs. If you don't do that, you're not bringing people with you, but you're also not understanding what the issues are and what people want from it. But it's got to focus on outcomes. It's no good focusing on inputs and processes. Got to be the outcomes. All of that other stuff you can, then do. And then the prototyping bit is important, but you can do that really cheaply.
And really quickly.
Yeah. Whereas, I worked in, I won't say which boroughs it was, but I've only worked for free. So, and it weren't Brent. But, if you wanted to change something, you had to write a business case, you had to do this. There's so many hurdles to get over that you just lost the will to live, so you didn't bother.
Yeah.
And they never innovated because of it, because it was just too much wading through treacle to just get the smallest thing done.
Yeah.
Now that might have been fine for the finance people at the time, keeping a control over spend in their mind.
Yeah.
But actually, in reality, they were costing money. They were costing it. But so it's
well, the tighter you grip it, the worse it becomes, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. This is a really interesting conversation. We're just about, I won't say which local authority, but we're just about to start a piece of work where we're running a prototype of an approach to delivering savings and process improvements. So instead of doing all those level of outline business case, PIDs, and all of that stuff, getting very quick to the testing, and then using that to decide, well, which savings opportunities do we prioritize on the basis of our very, very quick testing. I think it's a real misconception that this kind of way of working is hard and resource intensive. Done well, it should be. We're going to do this really, really quickly.
Yeah, and there's a place for PIDs and all of those things. Once you're into a project and you want to try and manage something, between a couple of train rails, then that sort of, there is a place for that. But there's also a place to test and try things out and move a bit quicker on those sorts of things to get to the right sort of solution. And then it has to be implemented, doesn't it? And you can bring in your project disciplines at that point, can't you?
Yeah, I think for the way of working with that we're talking about to work, there needs to be some real hygiene factors in place. You need to have the right people in the room, because if you don't, then they're gonna pull in an opposite direction later on. You need to have good facilitation. I got interested in facilitation because of you, because you put us on pinpoint training.
Yeah, the old pinpoint balls.
Love pinpoint, yeah. The glue is
I
quite
literally
toxic.
I first saw those when the Audit Commission first started doing their inspections of local government. That would have been like, when would that have been? In the 90s. And they had these boards with sticky paper and pins and stuff. And I asked them afterwards, and it's a German process that they obviously go through it in much more rigidity in Germany than we ever used it. But ever since then, those boards followed me everywhere. We ordered them everywhere we went, didn't we? So,
but it's foundational, the principles in that facilitation approach, that you try and include a really diverse range of voices in coming up with in understanding the problem.
But it also means that no one person can dominate.
Exactly.
Because of the way the facilitation works, and that's what's good about it. Everybody feels they come out there feeling like they've been able to contribute, what they feel. And I think that's the most important thing of them at all. You do come to a consensus, and those agitators and those that, don't want to do it have been in there, but the consensus, if it's the right one, it is as it emerged, hasn't it?
Or more or less consensus, yeah.
Yeah, well, they won't necessarily still agree with it, but they'll see that it came about in a democratic way, which is the foundation of the way we all live anyway, isn't it? So, it's got to be right, isn't it?
Looking back now, reflecting on this 40 odd years of
46
doing this work, what you can think about anything you want, but I'm thinking specifically about some of the work you did in Brent, because incredibly transformative. I think some of the shared service stuff has a lot of implications for local government reform. But what are the things that you're sort of most proud of now you're looking back? Now you're out your suit.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm out my suit. Yeah, that don't fit me anymore.
Yeah, exactly. For the good reasons. It's really exciting. Yeah.
For good reasons. Yeah. I guess what I'm most proud of really is that I think I left Brent in a better place than when I went there.
Right.
I feel like I had some contribution toward not the only person, obviously, but I feel like I did. Through the pandemic in particular, I think Brent I'm sure every council did, but responded really well to that. We created a lot of support for people that were very vulnerable and were really struggling. We got funding and people could apply for grants and funds and things like that. The community hubs themselves, the extension of that into the New Horizons project. Was really good. I was working on another project just before I left where we were getting a community group in to start running the CAF back in the Civic Centre, which closed down at the pandemic and never reopened. And now that's reopened now, and they're supporting people back into work through that programme. And I'm really proud of the work that my team and they did in order to do that. Lots of things like that. We had one of the first cybersecurity strategies in local government. We set up one of the first sort of boards around the ethics of data.
Yeah.
Before we did anything with a sort of like digital IT data usage, we'd take it through this board and add external people on, where we'd talk through what the implications are. And mostly the implications are that you've got to make sure that the people that are receiving these services and changes have had an input and understand what you're doing with their data. Mm-hmm. So, you've got to share that information with the public and things like that. Lots of things, basic building blocks, having a really strong digital and transformation team, really good customer services. Lots of things I'm proud of it. So many actually that it's hard to list them all. But the politicians there were great with me in particular. I really enjoyed working with them, and they're a good bunch of people. And my colleague peers, that I work with as well. So I had a really enjoyable time there actually. I'm proud of some of the legacy that I've left there.
Yeah, well, your retirement do was like a little mini festival at the at the town hall, and I was
Civic Centre.
I was at the Civic Centre.
Yeah,
Sorry, apologies, Brent.
Yeah.
I love that Civic Centre because when you're in there, it's really used by the community. It's in the heart of the community.
The thing that when I first went to Brent, It's one of the things that I thought, well, actually I could work here. I walked into the civic centre and it was just the hive of people moving around, lots of people from the community, officers of the council. Just generally, it's just a buzz. It's a very modern building. It still is in terms of it's, about 13 years old now. But it's a lovely space and it's used really well. The design of it was very good. Yeah, the design of it was very good. It's such a nice place to work in.
Well, one of the things that I was struck by was the obvious relationship you had with the leader of the council and with members. And I remember you saying to me a long, long time ago, probably about 15 years ago, we were talking about Barry Quirk, and you'd said that one of the real successes that, or one of Barry's real successes has been his ability over a very long period of time to navigate the balance between the work with members, and in the case of Lewisham, the mayor of the council, and his role of the head of paid service, and navigating that over a long period of time is inevitably quite difficult, and it seems like that's something that you've figured out for yourself as well. And I wonder how you've thought about that.
It's when you're going up through, this is advice for anyone who's going into local government and wants to get into more senior roles. One of the big questions they ask you is about your interface with members and how do you deal with members this, how do you deal with members that. And like when you're not working with members, you sort of feel, well, there must be some sort of, is there a thing here then? What is it that, but they're just the same as you. They're working in the same place because they want to deliver better outcomes for the people of that area. Yeah. And when you realise that, then actually, and they realise that that's what you're trying to do, then it becomes, the relationship becomes better, I think. I think it's no different to what I was saying about with peers or colleagues. You have to build up a relationship and a trust with people. And then I think you can have honest conversations with them because they know that it's coming from a good place. Yeah. And you've not got an ulterior motive and you're not trying to, there was a politician in Redbridge years ago when I worked there, and he used to say to me, "Oh, can we do this?" And I say, "Oh no, you can't do that." And he'd say I was curbing him. "You're curbing me," he used to say, because I was saying no rather than what is he trying to achieve and how can we get to it in the right way. And I think that's another thing with politicians that you've got to remember is it's not necessarily their day job, remember? Yeah. And they've got to be learning that as they go. So you've got to understand what it is they want to achieve. And, they might have an idea, but it might not necessarily be the best way of doing it. And then it's trying to, get them to see that might be another way of getting to the outcome they want than the one that they're trying to promote. So, but basically it comes down to a working relationship when there's mutual respect and trust. And I've just always tried to, be honest as I can with people. They know where I'm coming from. They know I'm, what sort of person, it's coming from. And I think that probably helps. That's all. I don't think there's anything else. I haven't got any magic answer to that.
No, it's foundational, isn't it? Relationships are primary, and then everything else is derivative. So.
I think so. Yeah. So, and that's why I've always, that's the thing that I think you need to build that first. It's like that thing, don't they? They say that there's a reason why a period of time for someone to be on probation is 6 months, because you have a couple of months of sort of like just talking to people and getting to know them, and they're all thinking, oh, they're all right. You have a couple of months of starting to deliver, and they're thinking, oh, they're all right, or not. Mm-hmm. Then a couple of months of, moving on, and by 6 months, you've got your feet under the table. You understand. You're probably working at 90% by then, or they've realised that you're never going to work in that, and that's they will extend it, or you're gone, isn't it? So it's that sort of period of time. They say it takes 6 months to get into, and that's because it's the relationships that take the time to build.
What do you do in order to get those relationships kick-started when you start a new role?
Well, I've always just worked hard, delivered what I've been asked to deliver, and had conversations and helped people.
Yeah.
So people are always in need of some support, and they'll always ask, "Oh, any chance you can do this?" A lot of people just say, "Oh, well, we're really busy, we can't do that." I would just say, "Yeah, we'll do that." And then I'd go back and say to you, "Oh God, we're doing this now, isn't it?" But but I've always been like that. I can't. It's just the way I am. But I know that when I was coming up, whatever job I was in, if I asked for help, it's because I needed it. And if you didn't get it, it made it even harder, didn't it? So why would I want to make life hard for somebody if I could help?
Yeah.
That's just how I see it. But those things give you a little bit of credit in the bank each time, don't they?
Yeah.
Until at such point where you've got quite a lot of credit in the bank, haven't you? So when something does go wrong, if it ever did, God forbid, it might not be as disastrous as it could have been given who you are.
Yeah. Or when you got to ask for the finance.
Yeah, or whatever it is, or whatever. Yeah.
Great.
So that ladder thing, innit? It'd be nice to people on the way up. Because, there's a way down as well, isn't there? So.
Well, I think you got off the ladder at a nice spot.
Yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining.
So look, Peter, honestly, I respect you so much, and you're a really good mate, and you've had enormous impact on my career and lots of my peers as well. And I really am so grateful for that. And it's really nice to be able to have this chat. What people won't know if they're watching to the end of this video is that this is the second time we've done this interview.
Yeah, I know.
Because we accidentally deleted all the footage, which is not ideal. So you're also very gracious.
It probably worked out for the best, didn't it?
I think so.
Clearly, 7 months on, I'm a more relaxed person than I was when.
Well, look, we'll call it there. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it.
Brilliant. Thank you as well, Joe. Cheers.